Almost enthusiastic, almost there. One more time. Good morning. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. We're going to do science today. Woo! Gosh, what an exciting day. I've been thinking about this for a very long time since Mallory buttonholed me at a farmer's market in Vande Hei one day, and I thought we were going to talk about the specials of the meat thing over there, and next thing I know, we're talking about space. And it was good. And then I didn't hear from her for a long time. And then magically one day, here come the text messages from these multiple people whose last names are White, and said, we're doing this thing, we're doing this thing. I was like, oh my goodness gracious, this sounds so exciting. For those of you that know me, for a very, very, very long time here in Roanoke, I was on TV at the CBS affiliate doing weather. And I didn't grow up to be a weatherman, but you know, sometimes when jobs come along, you take them because they offered it to you. And I happen to know a little bit about geography, so I had the ability to do this. In Virginia, it will be cloudy today. And in Montana, it's another cold one. And I don't know what's happening in Texas. The ability to do that gave me a career. The problem was I wasn't trained as a scientist to do it. I was just trained as a guy whose hands could move and could talk at the same time. Then in 1985, there was a flood in Roanoke. And one of the bad looks is to have a wife who's in the middle of the flood, not knowing there was going to be a flood, but then again, neither did her husband. And so I'm safely at work, and the water's getting higher and higher and higher. And she calls me and she said, what should I do? And I said, well, maybe you should go to the second floor and you'd be safe there. Guys, back me up. We're not the best on advice under pressure, right? So she goes to the second floor. Long story short, they save her in a boat. She's pregnant with a 2-year-old who thought this was the coolest day of his life. And that begat the, I better go back to school. And Virginia Western played a role in that I don't think Dr. Sandel knows or even should know, but their library was where the proctored exams were given for all the universities that I started studying with in order to be a meteorologist. So it's crucial that I be here relative to where we are, where the library is, to come here and learn my meteorology. So that's what I did for 40 years. Tried to retire, didn't succeed. I now anchor the 6 o'clock news. I think they ran out of bodies. And so I do that as my side hustle, but now I'm a professor of practice at Virginia Tech in the School of Communication, in which we are trying to teach the students journalism, we're trying to teach them performance, we're trying to teach them analytics, and quite frankly, it's the most exciting time of my life. So to be invited to come here to be with you guys today is just an extension of the joy of being involved in all things science. So thank you for having me. It is so exciting to invite you to this event. It's the first downlink event with NASA. But not only that, it's a first for Virginia Western, and we're the only host of a NASA downlink in the Southeast this spring. And there's so many things going on in space right now. If you're a space buff, you know there's stuff flying all over the place. Whether Elon Musk is throwing up junk or whether we've got a Webb space telescope out there, whatever we're doing, there's so many amazing things going on. So it's so important that we should gather today and talk to somebody on the space station about the cool things that they're doing. In a moment, I'm going to bring Dr. Sandel up here, but I wanted to share with you that I've been watching him for 18 plus years. And Virginia Western, when I first met it, was doing its thing, and then Dr. Sandel got here, and lo and behold, stuff started happening. New programs, exciting programs, health programs, STEM programs, new buildings. But I'm here to tell you what I know to be true. Dr. Sandel has taught you something that you may not even know, and that is how to travel in the rest of the world. Does anybody know how he did that for you? He had 3 roundabouts built right on the campus here. You go overseas, ladies and gentlemen, and that's their stoplight. And if you go to Ireland, there's one every block. And trucks go through them, and and they're, you know, and then when you go to London, you're driving on the wrong side of the road to begin with. So heaven forbid, but he has quietly shown you the world by building not one, not two, but 3 roundabouts in front of the campus here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce the president of Virginia Western Community College, Dr. Robert Sandel.
Yeah, thanks, Robin, for that nice introduction. And the roundabouts are a story of their own. Once we taught people you had to go around them and not over them, we started having some success. But the roundabouts have been quite a story, and I think everybody's kind of adjusted to them now. So again, thanks for the nice introduction. And I want to thank all of you guys for being here today, guys and ladies, for being here. This is quite an exciting time. One of the most exciting events we've ever had on this campus in the last few years. And it's good and refreshing to see people. It's good to see people in this venue and in this auditorium, and ready to give a big Southwest Virginia welcome to the astronauts aboard the International Space Station. Can you even comprehend that? I mean, what's going on here today? I mean, that's amazing. And before we begin with our distinguished lineup of speakers, I do want to recognize a few folks who were instrumental in making this possible. Now, these 2 ladies, they did it, not me, they did it. I want to thank, and I want you to applaud for them in a minute, but I want to thank Assistant Professor of Biology, Dr. Mallory White, and Student Activities Coordinator, Natasha Lee. This program and opportunity is truly a result of their vision and their efforts. Thank you, Mallory and Natasha. Let's give them a nice hand. Yeah, and that is so exciting, you 2 ladies. I always go by the cliche, things don't happen, people make them happen. And these people made it happen. And I also want to thank Professor White, and she's no relation to Mallory, that I want to recognize I want to recognize Amy White, our Dean of STEM here at Virginia Western. If you know Amy, you know she's a doer. She has things going on all the time, and they're usually 99% of the time good things. And she keeps me informed about them. Her leash is long. She can do whatever she wants to do because she does a great job. Amy leads the team here and established great relationships within the community to make these partner-type events happen. And I want to thank Amy. And Amy's not feeling well today, so Amy White's another person when you see her. Congratulate her on this event today. None of this would be possible without the outstanding media team we have here at Western. All this is, they put it all together. Joe Bear, Jim Underwood, and the rest of we call the media geeks played an instrumental role in getting our students' questions successfully to NASA for this event and are here to ensure everything runs smoothly today. The technology will run smoothly today. We also thank Carol Tarrant for her team for successfully communicating this event to the community. Carol, you and your team, thank you. And now I'd like to welcome our first speaker. Representing the 6th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives, Mr. Ben Klein is a member of the House Committee on Appropriations and the House Committee on the Budget, 2 powerful committees. Mr. Klein grew up straight up 81 in Rockbridge County. He and his family now live in Botetourt. Unfortunately, Representative Klein was unable to join us today, but he didn't want to miss being part of this event. So he did send us along his virtual remarks. So get ready for his virtual remarks. Please join me in welcoming Representative Klein. Let's give him a nice hand.
Hi folks, Congressman Ben Klein here. I wish I could be there with you in person today, but unfortunately my schedule wouldn't allow it. I acknowledge that this video might not be as exciting as the call you're going to receive from the astronauts in just a few minutes, so I'll do my best to keep it brief. I'd like to thank Dr. Mallory White for inviting me to join this event, as well as President Sandel and Virginia Western Community College for hosting. What an exciting opportunity it is for both college and high school students to participate in an Earth to Space question and answer session. The Quest program at Virginia Western is an ambitious undertaking that encourages students to explore new interests and enhances STEM education in the greater Roanoke Valley. Through questioning, understanding, exploring, and solving together, Quest has worked to target college students here at Virginia Western and throughout the Roanoke Valley to incorporate NASA educational materials in classroom settings, showcase STEM students' successful projects, teach about space and astronomy, and learn about STEM careers from community partners. The importance of projects like this and STEM education cannot be overstated. In an ever-evolving modern world, studying science, technology, engineering, and mathematics is the future. And the ability to pursue STEM education and career opportunities are endless here in Virginia. From dozens of institutions of higher education to exciting research opportunities to being in close proximity to NASA facilities, the Commonwealth has it all, and I encourage you to take advantage. I was pleased to write to NASA supporting today's downlink event, and I hope you all enjoy the conversation with some of our country's brightest minds. Thanks again for having me, and God bless America.
Our next speaker is Dr. Brent Malone. He's the president and CEO of the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Now, when I said that Virginia Western was building out some things, those of you that spend time on the Virginia Tech campus will know what I'm talking about when I say there are more cranes and there are more concrete trucks and there are more workers on that campus right now than I've ever seen before. But the Corporate Research Center, which sits over here to the right-hand side, is the first thing you see as you're driving in on the main drag. And for a while, that one seemed to be the place where these little things were popping up and popping up and popping up. Well, when I met Brett a little while ago, he said, yep, that was my predecessor. Now it is my turn. Dr. Malone took over just 18 months ago. Deep roots in the tech community, a 3-time Hokie. Malone has founded and built several companies in the biotech, robotics, aerospace, engineering, and software industries. I'm very excited for this talk today. Please welcome Dr. Brent Malone.
Welcome. Boy, this is exciting, and I am privileged and honored to be invited to, frankly, get to know you and get to talk a little bit about space. I am totally a space nerd. As Robin said, they gave me 3 degrees. I had my PhD in aerospace engineering from Tech. After being there for 11 years, they said, look, you've gotten all the degrees you can get the heck out of here to do something. And it was just so exciting to start companies and be an entrepreneur in technology in aerospace. So what is it that makes my love and passion for aerospace tick? Well, how many of y'all know the name Jack Ridley? Probably, maybe not. How many of you all know the name Chuck Yeager? There we go. So Jack Ridley was Chuck Yeager's flight test engineer. He was the brains behind Yeager. Not that Yeager didn't have an immense amount of knowledge and intellect, but Yeager flew the airplane. But Ridley, Jack Ridley was the engineer that figured out how to break the sound barrier with the design, and all of the many, many engineers at NASA before him. I'm such a nerd, I named my first dog after Jack Ridley. I said, I want to do that. I want to be the technology, and I want to understand the science behind things like breaking the sound barrier. And I have continued the tradition. I've had now 4 generations of golden retrievers. I'm a golden retriever guy. I've had 4 generations of golden retrievers, and they've all been named after aerospace guys. I've got Deke Slayton. How many of y'all know Deke Slayton? I was on a string for a little while. I named my dogs after Mercury 7 astronauts. I hope our guys in space hear that. I've had Gordon Cooper matched. My dog Cooper was such a clown. And if you go back and you look at the history of the Mercury 7 astronauts, they all had very special personalities. And Gordo was no exception. He was kind of the clown of the group. And my golden retriever, Cooper, didn't let me down. He was the guy that could put 3 tennis balls in his mouth. I love aerospace, and I'm now in a job where it's a technology playground. I can have a conversation with a company that's doing quantum computing one day. I have a conversation with a company doing self-driving trucks the next day, and everything in between. And so, it's really been exciting for me. I started my career, they gave me a PhD in engineering, and I went off and immediately started my first company. And I did software that helped people design airplanes. And one of my greatest achievements was creating this company and creating the software that helped our aerospace engineers design faster airplanes, and to design more fuel-efficient airplanes, and to design rockets that could go to Mars. And so one of the greatest achievements of my career was having NASA buy our software and start using it. And NASA used software for us, that we developed to help them do things like systems engineering and complex integration of all the different parts and pieces of a vehicle, of a space vehicle. And so it was really cool. When I was a freshman, I got to work on a project for a Mars drone. And, of course, when I was a freshman in 1986, right after Robin Reed's flood and his pregnant wife rowing down the river, I was on this project. And, of course, we hadn't been to Mars. We didn't put rovers on Mars. But there was this study, and they said, how do you design an airplane that flies around in Mars, in the Martian atmosphere? And if you know a little bit about it, it's different. You've got different gravity, different density, different Reynolds numbers, for those of you really geeking out. But it really taught me, how do you design something for a foreign environment, And, we did that project. It was a lot of fun, and it was all on paper, right? And it was all on paper, and we just moved on. And, last year, I had the chance to interview Dave Lavery. And Dave Lavery is a NASA engineer, and he was head of the Perseverance project. How many of you know that name, Perseverance? Perseverance and Ingenuity, the two vehicles last year that landed on Mars. I'm such a technology nerd, I have a podcast now. If you guys want to hear some awesome interviews in terms of, great people like Dave Lavery, you can subscribe to our podcast, Start Disrupting. But Dave talked about how they landed Perseverance and Ingenuity on Mars, and then how this rover, this helicopter rover, took off and flew around in the Martian atmosphere. And it just kind of gave me goosebumps. It took me all the way back 30 years thinking about how we did that on paper, and how in my lifetime, in my short little career of 25, 30 years, we saw that happen. And it gets exciting for me, because now I think about, what are you guys going to see? We're just now getting started. And it's really cool, it's really exciting. And so, what got me into that was just this hope. Why do we explore? Why do we go to space? Why do we want to go to Mars? And why is it there's this little nagging feeling, right? Like, we can send robots to Mars, we can send drones, and we can explore. We're really good at that. And it's cheap, and it's safe. And it's important that we know how to do that. But how many of you really are thinking, I really want to see it from the human perspective? Like, there's something nagging about, we got to go there. We can send our machines, and we love to send our machines everywhere. But we want to go there, don't we? We want to be there, we want to see it. And so when I was talking to Dave on the podcast, he was saying, look, the first person to set foot on Mars has already been born. Now think about that for a minute. Somebody in your family, maybe someone who was born last week, maybe somebody sitting in this room, we don't know. But the technology is moving so fast, and the opportunities are coming at us so fast, that we're going to have somebody walking around on Mars in our lifetime. And if you think about how fast that's happened, it's just sort of gives me goosebumps. And so I work every day as hard as I can to clear the path for that person. And, the work that you all are doing, the science, the math, sometimes it's grueling, and it's, the math isn't fun sometimes. The science isn't fun, like deriving Laplace's equation to try to figure out the heat transfer for some kind of weird material, right? But if you can't figure that out, you can't protect that astronaut that's going to Mars. So it's not about the math and getting, it's about figuring out what to do with it. And so, we have companies in the CRC, we're just so delighted, and we're so excited to be partnering with Virginia Western. We've got engineers that go between Virginia Tech, faculty members go between Tech and Virginia Western. And, I can't say enough about Amy White. She is just one of my heroes, and Dr. Sandel is exactly right. She is a person that has more energy and more excitement for science, and I've had a chance to work with her on biotech projects. And it's really fun because it's all the same thing, because we're breaking boundaries and frontiers in bioscience, the same way we are in space and aerospace and engineering. You know, it's just on a little smaller scale. So I want to leave you with my thanks. I really encourage you, follow your passion, because I didn't really know what that meant when I was a freshman working on this little Mars rover thing. But to look back on it, it's like, man, I was excited and passionate about that. And my puppy, Ridley, was super excited too. He didn't know it. But I'll leave you with that. And it's like, think about what you're doing in the context of your impact on the generation. And there's so little time, things are moving at you so fast that get excited about something, latch onto something, and really think about what's your passion and follow that. I didn't really know, I didn't declare myself passionate about aerospace. I just kind of knew it felt good and it was fun. And I got excited about reading about history, like the Mercury 7 astronauts. They were my heroes. And, what we're doing now, there's so many things for you to be able to sort of disrupt. And, to borrow a word from the name of our podcast, we call it disrupting, start disrupting, because innovation is disruptive. And, figuring out how to land Perseverance on Mars. Now, we had landed a lot of vehicles on Mars, but Dave Lavery told me this is the first time they worked on descending with the cable, and then the rocket would slowly bring it down, and then the booster would jump off. I mean, it was a completely different way of landing on Mars than we ever did. And the guy who figured that out was in California. He worked at JPL, but prior to that, he was just a rock musician and a surfer on the beach. And he just had this sort of passion for being innovative. And it was a disruptive idea. And it was a disruptive idea that made it possible to land that vehicle in the way that it did safely. And it saved a lot of money and weight. And so at the end of the day, don't put yourself in a box and think about the ways that we've done things traditionally, because it takes your young minds, it takes a creative, fresh mind to think about some of these challenges and problems we have coming up. And so I'm excited to see what you're going to do. I'm excited to figure out maybe someday I'll have a chance to name a golden retriever after one of you all. So thank you so much, and I thank you for all of your time. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk, Dr. Sandel, Robin, and I'm looking for the main event. I woke up this morning super excited to hear what's going to come from the space station. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Malone. Appreciated that. We have basset hounds. We name them whatever dorky thing we can think of, because basset hounds are dorks, but they're great dorks. As I was listening to Dr. Malone's comments, I've been thinking a lot about passion recently, and we're going to have more speakers today that are going to talk to you about their passion. And we have astronauts that are living their passion. And I just think that sometimes that word, while it can be overused, actually gets right to the core of what's happening today. Some of you are just observing. Some of you may get a little spark. Some of you may go tell a friend of yours what you saw and heard today. But the passion thing is an interesting thing, and I'm thinking about it in terms of your current age. Dr. Malone, you said when you were a freshman at Tech, 25 years later, you saw something come to fruition, and that was with him that whole time. A friend of mine who lives in California named Allison was the project coordinator for a good portion of the James Webb telescope that just went out there. And she'd been working on it for 25 years. And when it came time to launch, God loved COVID, it wasn't possible to do it in person, so she watched it from Salem, Virginia. I mention that because, show of hands, not faculty, students, how many of you are 25? See what's going to happen? In your lifetime, you are going to see something so disruptive, and perhaps you'll have had a role in it. Perhaps you said something to somebody or heard something from somebody, and you may be part of the next great disruption that happens. When I started reading about the Webb telescope, and at some point the media reporting was there's like 700 places of failure, and any one of these ends this $10 billion mission. And I'm always a little disappointed with my media friends because they always fixate on costs. $10 billion down the drain because the thing didn't open up, right? When Hubble first went out there, it was nearsighted when it got there. And they had to fix that. Thank goodness they were able to, and Hubble's done a nice job for us. But passionate people do passionate things. And Allison got to live out her passion, and as far as I know, from what I read yesterday, Webb's in good shape. It has its heat shields doing its thing. It's sitting on the other side of the sun. It's 1 million miles away. And so in the coming months, we're going to start to see imagery. And you know what makes it so exciting is it can see so far that it can see the beginnings of things that happened a long time ago. And I'm so excited about that. But I do get bummed out when we get into the narrative, oh, it costs too much. Because this is how the space moon stuff stopped. By the time we got to 16, 17, and 18, we didn't know the names of the astronauts. We didn't know why they were going. We've already been there, seen that, done that. No, we hadn't. We'd just begun. They made some pretty cool rovers when they got up there. Man, that was nice stuff. And then the guy hit the golf ball in it. I think it's still going. It's pretty cool. So these are exciting times. These are times when I encourage you to embrace the resources around you, your professors, your subject matter, things you don't know anything about. When you're sitting in front of a computer, do you daydream about what it could do? I do, and I hope you will too. I'm particularly excited to introduce you to this next speaker. I've known him for a very long time. When you're in the media business, there are a lot of points in time when you don't necessarily know how to tell a story because the vocabulary is different. The science is different. What can you say in 30 seconds that will explain something, or if you're in a luxurious situation, 90 seconds? So you go looking for the experts that can do that. And I remember one day a lady calling the television station just frantic. And we said, ma'am, what's wrong? And she said, well, I just went outside and I can see the moon and I've never seen that in daytime before. Really? You never looked up before and saw the moon out there? Ever? Well, apparently, that was a cosmic revelation to Mr. John Goss, who discovered through personal observations when he was just 6 years old. It shook his young conception of the universe, launching an interest in astronomy, and I would say more than an interest, I would say a lifelong passion, since we're using that word today, of stargazing. And that's why he's joined us today. He's currently the president of the Roanoke Valley Astronomical Society, past president of the Astronomical League. That's the nation's largest federation of astronomical societies with over 21,000 members. Imagine going to their conference. 21,000 people looking to the sky. He's earned the title of Master Observer, authored the Celestial Observing Guides exploring the starry realm, and my favorite, Carpe Lunam. Mr. Goss is currently a contributing writer to earthsky.org. If you've never visited there, please do yourself a favor and go visit there. He writes a monthly stargazing column, Roanoke Skies, for the Roanoke Times. He has a bi-monthly column, Skywatch, for Blue Ridge Country Magazine. And for many, many years, he would come to the television station, maybe once a month. I forget how we did our almanac back then. And he would enlighten us with something that was worthy of the skies. I have disappointed Mr. Goss on many occasions. As the meteorologist, we would predict partly cloudy to clear skies. And we would be wrong about 50% of the time. That's a number that will come up a little later on in our conversation today. But won't you please welcome Mr. Clear Skies himself, Mr. Goss.
A few years ago, I had the good fortune, an unexpected good fortune, of having dinner with the head of NASA. Wow. You know, at that time, I was president of the Astronaut League, which opens up a lot of doors for you. And this is one such occasion. So I was sitting there at the table with Charlie Bolden, the head guy of NASA. And we were talking about NASA and space and all that. And he said, he gave me two things to take away with it. And I'll give you even a third thing. He was saying, you know, it's a big organization. It makes mistakes. What happens when it makes a mistake? What happens when the Hubble Space Telescope is launched and it is myopic? And you get all these billions of dollars up there, people are really complaining about it. Well, let's kick NASA around a little bit. He says, you know, think about what NASA has done. What nation has put 12 people on the moon? There's only one nation that's done that. What nation has sent spacecraft to Venus? Well, at the time there was 2, but now I think there's 3 or 4 now. What nation has sent spacecraft to Mercury? 1. What nation has sent spacecraft to Mars? A number of them now. How about to Jupiter? 1. How about to Saturn? 1. How about to Uranus? 1. Neptune? 1. Pluto? 1. A whole bunch of asteroids. Well, a few countries have done that. But really, the nation that has done all this, the nation that has put up the Hubble Space Telescope, the most famous satellite ever, the Hubble Space Telescope. What nation has put up, well, now the James Webb? Well, it was a collaboration. But it's all been the United States. So let's kick NASA around. But even when we're kicking it, remember what NASA has done. It has really achieved quite a bit more than any other organization. All the countries in the world look to the United States as the leader in space. I don't know where I'm going with this. That's one thing he talked about. Another item that he brought up was Mars. Let's talk about Mars. Everyone wants to talk about Mars. Charlie Bolden didn't want to talk about Mars. He wanted to talk about the moon. And he said, you know, if you get a bunch of astronauts together and ask them, how should the NASA focus its attention? Where should it focus its attention? Should it focus it on Mars or the moon? And he said, surprisingly, most astronauts would say the moon. Simply because when you talk about Mars, it's just a handful of people who are going to Mars in the near future. But to the moon, it's a whole bunch of people can go. So that means it increases their chances of actually going into space and to the moon and to someplace besides the space station. So that's something to think about. The moon is a real place that we still want to visit. One third item which came to mind while these gentlemen, Brent Malone, Robin Reed, and everybody else was talking about the history of space and what they have got out of it and who they have known from it. Keep this in mind, that all these people that they mentioned, all of them, they all got to come from someplace. They just didn't appear. They all came from someplace. And there is no reason why people in the future cannot come from here. Now, there's a lot of competition out there, but they all got to come from someplace. I mean, they're talking about people from, Chuck Yeager was from West Virginia. Brent was talking about people from California and just around the country. They all come from someplace, and they're all working for incredible things. So this is supposed to be a pep talk for you to realize that this is your opportunity to take your first steps. Because you're coming from someplace too, and there's no reason why it cannot be from Roanoke or Southwest Virginia, let's say. Keep that in mind on what we're about to say. So let's talk about the moon. I'm not going to talk about Mars. I'm only going to talk about the moon. One thing I'd like to do is that people, adults, kids, all have a misconception on how big space is and how far away space is. Obviously, I got the Earth. Earth is on this scale. You take some of your thin bubble wrap and wrap it around the Earth. On this scale, this represents pretty much the thickness of our atmosphere. So space starts right here. Outer space starts right here. and goes for not just millions of miles, but millions of light years, billions of light years.
This is where space starts.
When you hear of the space station today, where is the space station? It's just above this atmosphere. It's not something in deep space. It's in low Earth orbit. Called that for obvious reason. It's just a low orbit right above the Earth. It's just above our atmosphere. In fact, by some definitions of our atmosphere, it's still within it. When it flies overhead, it's pretty close. It's about as far away as Washington, D.C. is from Roanoke when it flies directly overhead. So it really isn't very far away. Keep that in mind. So I have the Earth. And on this Earth scale, the moon is about this big. It's about the size of a tennis ball. You have your regular classroom-sized globe, and the moon is a tennis ball. The moon is about a fourth the diameter of the Earth. Now, I ask this without picking on anybody, because I just know that most of you are going to get this wrong. Embarrassingly wrong, this next question. On this scale, if the Earth is this big and the moon is this big, how far away is the moon from the Earth? It's been my experience that people, you go to Cub Scouts, you go to high schools, you talk to parents, they will all say something like this. That, no, way too close. Okay. Yeah, kind of right out in here. This is where the moon is, on this scale. And people seem really shocked on how big space really is, because this is our nearest celestial body in space. About out to here. The nearest celestial body. This is one reason why it's kind of a big deal of going to the moon. It's just not right there. It's pretty far away. You talk about going to Mars and other planets. Well, it's many times farther than this. But on this scale, this is about it. So keep that in mind when you're talking about the space mission, the Artemis mission going to the moon, which might be launching the first one here in April, an unmanned mission. But we got some coming up over the next few years. I'm not going to say much about that because I'm certainly not an expert at it. But this is the Earth and the moon. It's not out here. It's way over there. Keep that in mind. One more demonstration. Ray, would you like to come up here for a moment? Yes, please. This is what I get fancy and actually drop the ball and it bounces in the audience. Well, obviously Ray is going to be the Earth. And I'm not going to do this scale because I don't want to walk off the edge of the stage. As I was just showing you, the moon on this scale would be way over there. Well, the moon orbits the Earth, obviously. And keep in mind that the moon always keeps the same face towards the Earth. And yet it goes around the Earth once a month. We like to say the moon rotates every orbit it goes around the Earth. Now, how does it do that? So my little lame representation of the moon here, but it's always this side facing the Earth, so it's like right here. The moon goes around the Earth, and as you can see, this the face is now pointing in this direction. You can turn around, Ray. So Ray is spinning around. You don't follow me, though. Just kind of go around. We did not rehearse this. But the moon goes around the Earth, as you can see now, is still facing the Earth, and it's still that way. So it has changed from this direction to now this direction. Go around even further. And I want to bump into this guy over here. Now the moon's facing this direction. So it has rotated 3/4 of a turn as it has gone 3/4 of the way around the Earth. Get back over here. Now from my point of view, again, it's still facing the Earth. Now it's gone around. So the moon, thank you, Ray. My goal is to embarrass everybody, including myself. So the moon rotates once every time it goes around the Earth. Okay. But that's something to always keep in mind because we always see the same face of the Earth towards us, even though it's rotating around, excuse me, around Earth. I'd like to move on to a little slide demonstration. I chose the title of this simply because we are looking at the moon again, and it's going to be a new thing for us. Even though it has been up there for millennia, or for everybody has seen the moon. Everybody on Earth has seen the moon. Before we start out with this little talk, here's a question for you. You've all heard this. It's in cartoons, it's in history. Everyone laughs at it, but no one knows. Why has it been said that the moon is made of green cheese? You know, people aren't stupid. They weren't stupid 200 years ago, 300 years ago. They knew that the moon was not made of green cheese. So why did they say that? Why does it get caught on? Well, we're going to come back to this. This is the part of the demonstration which I'm trying to hook you into it so you won't be falling asleep because you got to find out this answer. Yeah, think clever. We've gone to the moon, astronauts have gone to the moon 6 times, 12 different astronauts have walked on its surface, so we've learned everything we know about that we need to know about the moon, right? Well, consider that the surface area of the near side, and the far side is too, but think of the surface area of the near side is just about equal to the area of the United States and Canada combined. You go to the United States and Canada 6 times, are you going to see it all? I mean, just think of everything that is out there in these 2 big countries. Everything from the Grand Canyon to the Canadian Rockies, to the Canadian Arctic, to the Everglades in Florida, to the mountains out west, to little old Roanoke. You know, it's all right there. So there's a lot to see. There's a lot we haven't seen. So keep that in mind. The moon it's a lot smaller than the Earth, but it's still a big place. That's a lot that we haven't really seen. And this is just the near side. The far side is equally as large or equally as small, depending on how you look at it. So keep that in mind on why we do these things. The moon keeps the same face pointed towards the Earth all the time. No matter what phase it's in, no matter if it's a nice pretty crescent hanging in the west, or if it's a big bright full moon overhead, or if it's the new moon, which you can't see because it's in the daytime sky, it always keeps the same face towards Earth. Now, I want you to think of something, and keep this in mind, of what I have pointed out here. There is a crater. It's not really a crater, it's more like a walled plain, but people call it a crater, called Grimaldi. It's this big round black circle there. It's a crater, walled plain, filled full of basaltic surface, lava flow, which is why it's so dark. There's a region just to the southwest, this area here, which we will discuss, which is why I'm up here talking about all this stuff right now. At point of history, one reason why we went to the moon was to figure out, one scientific reason why we went to the moon was to figure out how it was formed. What in it could show us the lunar evolution. Astronomers saw something at this area of the moon. It's kind of hard to describe, but they saw a dark region with some mountains, and they couldn't quite figure out what it was. 1960, or I don't want to get the date wrong here, but it's like the early 1960s. There was a lot of effort to figure out what that was. And a researcher, I think his name was William Hartman, did a really interesting thing. He did something which we will do here in just a few minutes, although I don't have all the techniques that he did, all the sophistication. But what he did was project the moon onto a sphere, which we will try here in a few minutes. This slide shows you an enlarged version of that area of the moon I was just talking about. You can see kind of a strange dark area right there. All these way up there, so you can see this is magnified quite a bit. But there's a strange dark area here with some other stuff around it. What is it? What was it? Well, it's called Mare Oriental. And I don't want to go into it all because it's been misnamed, but the name has stuck. Mare Oriental. So what this researcher did, so he took an image of this and stretched it from east to west. So it looked like it was, you see this is really bizarre looking because the perspective isn't quite right, but he stretched it and he could see that there was a central dark region with some mountains around it and some other dark areas with mountains around it. So that was something we had not seen before on the side of the moon that faces us. This is right on the edge, so it's like 90 degrees from us, so we really can't see it very well at all. Okay, so let's go back. Been there twice, but there it is. So let's take that moon and rotate it 90 degrees from west to east, and this is what you get. This picture was taken by the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, a NASA spacecraft. You know, the United States put that there. The United States got this picture. So rotated, we've gone about 90 degrees around the moon, which we never see this angle. So there you got Grimaldi. Let's go back. Notice how Grimaldi is oblong, north-south oblong. Well, that's all due to foreshortening. It really is round, pretty much. Walled plane, round. And now here's Mare Oriental. This isn't a great picture. It has to be enhanced a little bit, which I'll show you in just a second. But you can see that there is another plane in the center with some basalt rings around it, and there's some mountains around those rings. Here's a better image of that whole region. Grimaldi is way up there to the upper right. But you have the central region of the Mare, and you got a ring of mountains. You have some plains, ring of mountains, some more plains, another ring of mountains. So that really looks like a bullseye. It looks like what happens when you drop a big rock into a pond of water. It moves out. You have rings moving out. Something like this, or this feature, if it was on the near side of the moon that we could see it, that would probably be the most distinguishable feature on the moon. So I think, well, how is this caused? Well, something like this is what led scientists to figure out the evolution of the moon, what this really was. Okay, go back. What it was a Mare, a flat plane, a basaltic plane, which is what all this stuff was. But it became clear that what happened, what they got from with the astronauts, when the astronauts brought back all these samples from the moon, they were able to actually precisely date them. And they found out that, yes, these were like billions, 3.7, 3.8 billion years old, and so on. The idea that came up on how the moon was formed, and I'll just briefly describe it because of course it's pretty complex. But about 4.5 billion years ago, right after the Earth was formed, a Mars-sized body crashes into the Earth. Boom! All this debris comes out, and that debris coalesces into the moon. So you have this round, hot, molten blob out there orbiting Earth. It is hit by fairly large asteroids, like 60-mile diameter asteroids, which cause these round depressions on the moon. Cause this and some of the others. You can see there's probably a whole bunch on here overlapping. And in doing so, they throw out mountains of Earth to form rings around them, which is what this is right up here. That's the highest mountains on the moon, but that really is uplifted, thrown out debris from an asteroid that created the Mare Imbrium Basin 3.7 billion years ago. And then those basins had some cracks in them, and they flooded with lava, with cooled off to show all that. And then we had smaller meteors smack into the moon later on, giving the craters that we see. In essence, that is the evolution of the moon. Now, I want to try something else here. Which I said I'm going to need some help here. So, to figure out what Mare Oriental, how that really happened, or the history of that, I'm going to show you something here. I have powers. So the moon was formed 3.7 billion years ago, and here we are 3.7 billion years later, sitting in here. It's okay. Could I have the stage lights on? Is that possible? Okay. So you can see the moon is rotating. This is a series of images taken by the Clementine spacecraft, which was in the mid-90s, as it went around the moon. And you can see various things. I don't know, hopefully you can see this. That's Mare Oriental there. And from my point of view, it's almost right on. But your point of view, it's coming right off to the edge, gone. There's Grimaldi, gone. Moon is rotating like so. So, which is what they did. They projected it onto a globe like this, looked at its side, and can see that there was a concentric circle. They still couldn't figure out what it was. It wasn't until a spacecraft went to the moon, orbited, and then the astronauts actually went and orbited and got great photographs of this, and they were able to figure out what it was. And that's what led researchers to propose these new theories of lunar formation, which have by and large stuck. We still believe in these theories today, although they've been modified with more information that has come along. So keep that in mind. That's if we didn't go to the moon to figure that out, it just came our way. So why go to the moon? Why go to the United States and Canada-sized area? Because we're going to find things that we don't. I can't tell you why, because if I told you why, we wouldn't have to go. We're going to find stuff out, and it's going to be interesting. So this is something to keep in mind. I have another display here, but I'm not going to show it in considering time here. But please keep in mind what I said about the people who are going to do all this stuff. We're going to, not just this year, next year, the year after, but in 20 years from now. As Brent Malone was saying, this is 25 years. 25 years. Your career, at the end of your career, you're going to be involved in something. Wouldn't it be cool if you got involved in something like this and was able to really demonstrate the nature of our existence, the nature of the universe, and what we have around us? People put their whole lives into this. You're just starting out. You can do the same thing on the moon, on Mars, or whatever. I can't tell you what, because I have no idea what's coming up. But it's all pretty incredible stuff. Please keep in mind that no matter what you do, there's no reason why these people cannot come from Roanoke. Is that a pep talk? Yeah. I forgot to give you the answer. Okay, so why has it been said that the moon is made of green cheese? Well, is it that mice are just extra active during the full moon? No. It's just something that people find funny? Well, yeah, but of course, those aren't the answers. Now, I looked this up, and I couldn't find the answer. But this is my answer. The moon, green, isn't referring to color. Green is referring to the state of uncured cheese. The moon resembles an uncured cheese wheel reflected in a pond. And that's, to me, that seems plausible. So you can take that home and disagree with it if you want, because no one really knows. But I guarantee you, people back then knew that the moon was not made of green cheese. They might not have known what it was made of, but they certainly wasn't green cheese. So on that happy note, I'll take leave of you. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope to see you in the future. Thank you.
I'm telling you, when you see him speaking somewhere, go see him. He can get wound up and give you some of the most interesting facts ever. I was thinking Swiss cheese the whole time because I think the moon looks like Swiss cheese to me, but I'll go with green cheese because I understand what that philosophy is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move on now to Mr. Ray Bradley's talk, which again is another one of those I'm looking forward to. They were all good topics. Mr. Bradley graduated from Virginia Tech not just a couple years ago, right? Not too long ago, yeah. And he pursued a career in the Army, serving as an officer in the Medical Service Corps. Then he came back to beautiful Southwest Virginia after 28 years of service in the Army. He is indulged in his what? Passion for science, including a member of the Roanoke Valley Astronomical Society, as a docent for the Belk Observatory in beautiful Bedford, Virginia. Mr. Bradley, won't you join us, please?
Thank you. No mic on? I can't tell from here. Okay, we're good. Well, again, thank you for coming today. Passion is a good word because in our household, feed the passion is our motto. That's what we do. And my passion is science, and particularly space science. And so that led me to the Solar System Ambassador Program. If you haven't heard of the Solar System Ambassador Program, it's run by the Jet Propulsion Laboratory for NASA. And basically, we're a group of volunteers who get special access to training, typically like webinars that are hosted by mission specialists at NASA, sometimes scientists that work for NASA. And this training helps us keep up with all the things that NASA's doing. And in turn, we bring that information to the public in events like this. But I have to say, though, NASA's doing so much these days, it's really hard keeping up. It really is. In the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to try to give you a quick summary of human spaceflight, from where we've been to where we're going. And I'm guessing that you're here today because you think exploring space is pretty exciting. Some of you might even want to boldly go where no one's gone before. I know I would if I was given the chance. But going to space is really hard. And to stay in space for any length of time is even harder. A whole lot of things out there will try to kill you. So how are we going to move out into this new environment where humans are really not well adapted to survive in? Well, if you think about it, we've done it before. Well, not humans exactly. By we, I mean life in general. In the past, life has conquered an alien environment that was just as harsh to it as space is to us now. To see what I mean, you've got to look back almost 500 million years ago to the early Paleozoic era. For billions of years, all life lived in the relatively warm and secure oceans. Early continents in this time were little more than dry, barren rocks that stuck out of these oceans. And in contrast to land, the oceans were warm, they were wet, they contained all the ingredients that life needed to thrive and survive. If you were thrown up on land in this time frame, you would surely die from suffocation, dehydration, starvation, or simply exposure to temperature extremes or even solar radiation. Yet, we know that life did adapt to living on land, right? That's why we're here. We wouldn't be here today if it hadn't. Step by step, life developed solutions to each one of the challenges posed by this harsh new environment. And that's how we're going to conquer space, step by step. We have to evolve our technology and our skills to adapt to space. Now, when life first left the oceans for dry land, it first had to take everything it needed with it until it could find those things in this new environment. And that's what we're doing today in space. We're taking everything we need with us to survive until we can learn to extract those resources from the places that we go. And there are basically 5 things you've got to have, life has to have to survive. You've got to be able to breathe. You need water, a constant supply of water. You also need energy. And this can be in a direct form like the sun, which plants use, or it can be in a stored form, like food or even nuclear fuel. You also need a shelter to maintain a livable environment. And last, life has to be able to move around. If it doesn't, it'll quickly exhaust the resources that are available to it that it needs to survive. Now, early Paleozoic life eventually found all these resources on land, but it took millions of years of evolution. Humans are adapting to space in just a few generations. See, space travel didn't start all that long ago, at least not on this planet. It may have started millions of years ago in a galaxy far, far away, but if it has, those aliens haven't reached us yet to tell us how they did it. Now, our first rockets that could get into space were built in the 1950s. And it all began with the launch of Sputnik by the Soviet Union in 1957. In the US, we followed shortly after with the launch of Explorer 1 in 1958. Now, these machines, they proved that you could get to space and stay in orbit for a long period of time. But what about living beings? Could a human survive the trip into space? Would the body function properly in the weightless environment of space? To answer these questions, we next had to send people there. We had to go into space to see if they could survive in zero-G, or microgravity to be more precise. We had to see if you could breathe normally. Would your lungs take up the oxygen? Could you swallow food and drink? Do your eyes focus properly without gravity? We didn't know. But all these questions and more were investigated as the United States and the Soviet Union sent people into low Earth orbit, first time starting with Yuri Gagarin in 1961. And then that was followed by NASA's Project Mercury. Shortly after that, NASA began Project Gemini. Now, where Project Mercury proved that astronauts could survive in space, Project Gemini was designed to determine if people could work in space. And after President Kennedy's challenge to land man on the moon by the end of the decade, this was the 1960s, Project Gemini shifted its focus to determining if astronauts could survive the 2-week journey to get to the moon, to land, and come back safely. So astronauts, they practiced maneuvering in space, both inside and outside the space capsule. But more importantly, they developed the docking procedures needed to bring 2 spacecraft together in orbit. This was a critical mission or task for the moonshot, but also for future missions to follow. And as you probably know, Project Gemini was succeeded by Project Apollo, which landed the first people on the moon. But Apollo is more than that. Apollo was the first and only missions to date that took us into deep space beyond the protection of Earth's magnetosphere, that magnetic shield that protects us from solar radiation and cosmic rays. Now, unfortunately, the Apollo program, it didn't last very long. They had a lack of interest, lack of funding, whatever you call it. But they only landed 6 times on the moon and it was shut down. But NASA was determined not to waste the knowledge and technology that we gained from Project Apollo. So they redirected the remaining resources of the program toward a new program called Skylab. And Skylab was the US's first attempt at a space station. Now NASA developed Skylab to be an orbital workshop to determine all the things we could do in space. Of course, the first thing we had to figure out was how long could people stay in space? You see, before Skylab, the longest American mission had only been 14 days under Project Gemini. Skylab had 3 manned missions, and they extended this duration first, I think, to 28 days with Skylab 2, 59 with Skylab 3, and 84 for Skylab 4. Now, this last record wasn't limited so much by the astronauts' capability as it was from how much food and water they took with them. However, a lot more was accomplished in these 3 manned missions than just setting endurance records. The crews underwent a whole lot of medical testing to determine the effects of living in zero-G for months at a time. Now, other research included astronomy, particularly solar observations, and, where's Robin at? Meteorology. And this was in the age before we had constant satellite coverage, giving us our weather forecast that we have today. Also, a whole lot of work was done on material sciences, developing the tools and the materials we needed to work in space. Now, all 3 of the missions of Skylab, they all took place in the first year of its orbit, which was 1973. And sadly, that space station orbited for 6 more years, empty, waiting for crews to return. That never happened. It eventually fell back to Earth. Now, while NASA was going to the moon, the Soviet Union, later Russia, they focused on developing space stations like this. And In 1971, they started their Solute program, and under Solute, they built monolithic or single module space stations. Their initial success wasn't all that great though, and a lot of these early missions were military in nature. They went so far as to launch weapon systems or to test weapon systems into outer space. But the Russians did gain a lot of experience and knowledge about spaceflight endurance, space station maintenance, and supply operations. And the Solute program led to modular space stations under the Mir program, which ran from 1986 to 2001. In fact, the last two launches under Solute served as modules for not only the Mir space station, but also the International Space Station to come. Meanwhile, NASA went a different direction. Today, you've got companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin. They're regularly launching reusable rockets. You see that all the time. But the first reusable rocket, if you think about it, was launched over 40 years ago. And that was, of course, the Space Shuttle. In all, they built 5 operational space shuttles. And over a 30-year period, from 1981 until 2011, these 5 spacecraft, they flew exactly 135 missions. And we learned a whole lot about living and working in space through the shuttle program. Now, true, this education came at a high cost, both in dollars as well as in lives. But the space stations proved something. They proved that reusable spacecraft, that was the future. That was the way to go. It was also a critical milestone in the future development of space as an industry. And that brings us to the next major milestone in space exploration, the ISS, International Space Station, which we should hear from shortly, right? The successful construction of the ISS can largely be attributed to the combination of both Russia's earlier experience with space stations combined with America's ability to conduct routine shuttle flights. The construction of the ISS began in November of 1998, and that was with the Russian module called Zarya, which means sunrise, mated to the American module Unity. And astronauts began to live on the space station in, I think, the year 2000. And that was because they added a third module, a Russian habitation module called Zvezda, which means star. They've been on board ever since, for over 21 years. Now, it took 37 space shuttle flights and 5 Russian rockets to deliver the large segments of the space station into orbit. And 5 different space agencies contributed to its construction. You had NASA from the US, Roscosmos from Russia, JAXA from Japan, ESA from Europe, and CSA from Canada. And for over 20 years, it has served as an orbiting laboratory conducting all sorts of research, everything from astrobiology, astronomy, physical sciences, material sciences, space weather, meteorology, human research, space medicine, life sciences, you name it. All sorts of studies have been done up there. And much of this research is being done to pave the way for future exploration of our solar system. Next up on that journey is we're going back to the moon. You see, NASA plans to land the next astronauts on the moon in just a couple of years. But this mission, it's not going to be a repeat of the Apollo era. We're not going to just go to the moon and gather some rocks and come back. Now, this time we're going there to stay. And this program is named Artemis. You've heard of that already today. But you may not know that in Greek mythology, Artemis was the twin sister of Apollo, and she was the goddess of the moon. And that makes it an appropriate name for the successor program to Artemis because the next astronaut to land on the moon is going to be a woman. Artemis is an international effort and a commercial partnership. And they're going to build a permanent research base, similar in concept as the Amundsen Scott Research Station we have at the Earth's South Pole. Like Amundsen Scott, the Artemis research base will be at the moon's South Pole. But in order to do this, the infrastructure for Artemis has to be a whole lot more capable, a lot more robust than the systems that they used in the Apollo days, the 1960s and 1970s. There are 4 major components to the Artemis infrastructure. First, you've got the Space Launch System. This is the most powerful rocket ever built, and it'll take all the equipment and personnel to the moon. Astronauts will ride on top of this rocket in the Orion space capsule. The Orion space capsule will then dock with the Gateway, which will be parked in orbit around the moon. And from the Gateway, astronauts will use a lunar lander to shuttle back and forth from its surface. Now, in many ways, the Gateway is similar to the ISS. It will have multiple docking ports, and it'll be able to sustain astronauts for relatively long periods of time. Of course, the Gateway will be in orbit around the moon, not the Earth. But it also will provide essential support for sustainable, long-term surface operations on the moon. Not just going to the moon and visiting like we did under Apollo. We're going to stay there and do research, conduct research over years. Also, the Gateway may eventually serve as a staging point for exploring deep space beyond the moon. In other words, manned missions to Mars will likely launch from the Gateway. Now, SpaceX recently received a contract to build this. This is the $3 billion human landing system. It's called Starship HLS, and it will serve as the lunar lander for Artemis. The Starship is also reusable. Astronauts and scientists will be able to ferry from the Gateway to the surface of the moon over and over again with a single spaceship. But it can do a lot of other things too. It's not just built to be the lunar lander. For one thing, the Starship can achieve Earth orbit with a huge payload, such as components for building even bigger spaceships off-planet, something we haven't really done before. The Starship can also carry a payload of fuel, and it can transfer that fuel to another spaceship while it's in orbit. No other spaceship has ever been designed to do this type of refueling operations before. And it's this capability that will likely be used in future missions to Mars and beyond. Now, similar to Apollo, NASA is using the crawl, walk, run method for the next moon landing. There's going to be 3 successively more complex missions between now and the actual landing. The first of these we talked about earlier was Artemis 1, and if everything goes well, it should launch this April. And it's going to be an uncrewed mission. It'll last about 25 days. It'll travel the 250,000 miles to the moon. It'll orbit a few times and then come back to the Earth. If all the systems check out with Artemis 1, then Artemis 2 is going to follow shortly afterwards and carry the next crew to the moon and back. Now, this crew is not going to land on the moon. It's going to be basically a full dress rehearsal to test all the systems before the actual landing. For those who may know a little bit of the history of the Apollo era, Artemis 2 will be very similar to the Apollo 8 mission that was done in 1968. And then comes the big day with Artemis 3. Artemis 3 is the mission that will land the next woman and person of color on the moon in 2024. Hold me to it, right? Or thereafter, soon after maybe. Now, during this first landing, astronauts will spend about 6 days on the surface. But after this mission, NASA plans to send astronauts to the moon about once a year to start building that permanent research base we talked about. And what we learned from Artemis will lead to human exploration of Mars, the Moon to Mars mission. But going to Mars is going to be a whole lot harder than going to the moon. We've got to learn to live for months outside of Earth's protective magnetic shield. We've got to prepare for medical emergencies in space. We've got to figure out a way to extract critical resources from the planet, such as air, water, and rocket fuel. Where will astronauts live and work while they're on Mars? How will they adapt to low-gravity operations, especially after that long space flight in zero-G? And these challenges are just the tip of the iceberg. However, almost every problem we need to solve in order to get to Mars can first be tackled on the moon. So Artemis will provide us not only a research base, but also a testing ground to work out solutions to all these problems to getting to Mars. And it will provide some of the infrastructure needed to launch these deep space missions to Mars and beyond. So that's where we are today. We've come a long way in a relatively short period of time. Both international and commercial partnerships in full swing, human colonization of space is rapidly becoming a reality. I hope you agree, the future of spaceflight looks pretty exciting. Are any of y'all planning on going out there? Raise your hand if you want to go to space. I got a few hands out there, that's good. Yeah, I would definitely go if given a chance. But let me ask you this though. How many people here have virtual reality headsets? I see a few hands there. I bought one of my sons one for Christmas this year, and it was, I think I've used it more than he has, to be honest with you. But it's fascinating because NASA has all these great high definition images, like the moon we saw here earlier, but International Space Station, Mars. You can get inside a virtual headset, and it's like being there. You almost feel like the zero G, too, because you get that vertigo feeling of being in a wide open space. So if you've got a virtual reality headset, check out some of NASA's imagery. If there are any questions, I'll try to answer them. I'm not an expert, but I'll try to answer them if they are. Okay. If not, I'll turn it back over.
I had my hand up over here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
I want to go to space. I want to go to space. No, that's all. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Is this out of your way?
Borrow your microphone just for a minute, because I don't know if
Okay.
it's a little different here.
I think it's still on, too.
So I shouldn't say anything in an open microphone. I have nightmares about my career ending when I said something to an open microphone. It's like the nightmare that never ends. You said what? We're going to change it up just a little bit here. I'm going to finish up without even going to the slideshow, but if you open it up, maybe, we'll see. We just have a few minutes, and can I task you with something? Mine says 12:50. When yours says 12:59, will you just give me that one finger? Just this one. That's the only one I need. I was going to talk to you a little bit about what NASA and what NOAA are doing to help in climate reporting. They work together. They're two huge government agencies. But what I think I'll do is just ask you, are you excited about space? Do you care about space? Do you understand that most of our population is mildly amused with space? But do you ever watch a launch and start crying? Do you ever, when it comes back to land safely, do you start crying? I have been a child of space. I was born in 1955. Right around 1960, they launched the first satellite that could take pictures of our skies. It was a television infrared camera, and it took pictures of our skies. And that was just 1960, not that long ago. And then there were these things, these launches, and we went into space, and sometimes successfully and sometimes not. And when my wife was pregnant with our second child, we went to the hospital one day because she thought she was having labor, and it was false labor, but you have to go check it out anyway. And when we came back, I turned on the TV, and Challenger was blowing up as I turned on the TV. And I just started crying, because on board was a teacher. And it was going to be such a spectacular public relations, funding, generating mission. But we didn't get to hear what she had to say about space. And those feelings stick with you forever. Once you're there, and once you're a space nerd, and if you're as near excited as I am about what will happen in about 20 minutes, I am just so thrilled that we get to talk to a guy who was born in Falls Church, Virginia, and he's been in space for 300 plus days. How cool is that? A number of years ago, Paul McCartney was on a nationwide tour, and they decided, and again for good publicity purposes, that during his concert in Los Angeles, they would do a live hookup to the International Space Station. Now, you may know that the space program has a long history of playing music to the astronauts when they wake up in the morning. So I thought maybe McCartney might play Good Day Sunshine, because it seemed to be like a logical title. No. He plays a brand new song he just written called English Tea. Won't you wake up with me and have a glass of English tea, cup of English tea? Man, it was live. The audience in the LA Coliseum were talking to the space shuttle astronauts as Paul McCartney was singing them a song. It doesn't get any better than that. And yet that excitement doesn't exist day after day after day. We forget about it. It fades away. The many accomplishments that are going on in space fade away. When Scott Kelly was on the space station for 300 and some odd plus days, a record that's about to be broken by the astronaut we're going to hear from shortly, he took a picture every day. And by the way, taking a picture on the space station is no small trick. The thing's going, what, 17, 19,000 miles? It's going fast, right? So if you put your, if you put your cell phone out the window, by the time you hit click, it's just one big blur. So he had to learn how to take pictures by moving his camera around. And he made a beautiful, beautiful coffee table book. It's not cheap, but it's cool. There's 300 pictures in there of things that happened in space. And Scott Kelly is kind of a hero of mine because he's done so many things. He's had so many things happen in his life. We actually passed him in a Chicago airport one day. You know, like you're walking around with all of humanity and you're not paying any attention at all. And then this short, bald guy walks by you and you go, God, I think I know who that is. But you don't want to, do the fan thing and just run up to him and say, are you Scott Kelly? Or are you his twin brother? That was the dilemma. He's got a twin brother. Looks just like him. Didn't want to do that. In the presentation I was going to show you, guess what you can do? Go to YouTube. Go to NASA. Type in climate reporting. And you'll see the video I was going to show you. Go to NOAA. Click climate reporting in YouTube. And you'll see the other video. These you can watch. These you know how to do. These you know how to mine. What I'm excited for you guys is what happened here this morning. You had people come in front of you and tell you about their passion. I'm a bystander. I'm a weather guy. I like clouds. I like clear skies, although John doesn't believe it. I like clear skies. But it is a passionate subject, one in which, in our current atmosphere of misinformation, sometimes gets muddied up a little bit. Some people don't think we landed on the moon. Some people think the earth is flat. Pretty sure it's not. Some people think that there's a new thing out that just fascinates me and I can't really wrap my head around it. Birds aren't real. You heard of this? It's a lark. Well, hey, there's a joke. It's a joke. He just was watching this protest one day and decided to counter-protest something else. He found a piece of white paper and he wrote, birds aren't real. What are birds? Does anybody know in this narrative? They're drones sent by the government to spy on us. So as they fly overhead, they're spying on us because birds aren't real. See the country and the world we're living in now? Use your science. Use it well. Let it light you up. Let it let you cry sometimes. I know the math is hard. I did the meteorology. Calculus sucks. Dynamic meteorology will make your head explode. And I have enough trouble remembering my password. I don't need for my head to explode. It's fascinating what science can inspire in you. I wonder which one of you is going to leave here with just that little spark of inspiration, that little thing that makes you say, I'm glad I sat here and in a few minutes listened to an astronaut orbiting the Earth at a very fast speed and learning so many things. I encourage you to, again, go to the old internet machine, look up this astronaut. There's all kinds of fascinating stuff on the NASA webpage about him, what he's done, and why he's done it. And I'm grateful that Mallory and the whole crew here was able to somehow cobble together just the right words to NASA to let us play along today. I think it's very, very special. And I'm glad you all were here. How are we doing on time? 2 minutes? Okay. Let me finish with, meteorology's been an interesting career. Farmers hate me. Because if you say, it's going to be sunny for the next 3 days, what do they want to do? Take up the hay. Takes a day to cut it, takes a day to turn it, takes a day to gather it up. And on day 2, when it starts raining, and I promised them 3 dry days in a row, you ain't never seen hate mail like I get. Forget the conspiracy theorists. Farmers don't like rain when they've got their hay laying on the ground. However, they're also realists. And they know that the joke, which I think they inspired, which was, I wish I had a career where I could be wrong 50% of the time and still get paid. To which I say, right on, because that's what I did for a lot of years.
Station Houston, are you ready for the event?
Houston Station, I am ready for the event.
Houston ACR, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Houston ACR. How do you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear.
Please stand by for opening remarks.
Hello, my name is Dr. Robert Sandel, president of Virginia Western Community College, located in the Roanoke Valley in southwestern Virginia. Roanoke is known as the Star City of the South, so our connection with the International Space Station today seems almost meant to be. On behalf of the faculty, staff, and students of our college, we thank you, the entire NASA team, for providing us with this remarkable opportunity to connect and be curious today. And with that, let's start with our first question.
Hi, my name is Jamana, and my question is, what is your favorite thing to do in space that feels different on Earth?
My favorite thing to do that I can never do on the ground is triple backflips. Here we go. That's that.
Hi, my name is Ben, and my question is, how do you think space travel will change over the next 25 years?
Ben, my hope is that in the next 25 years, we will have established a permanent human presence on the moon and have learned how to actually use the resources of the moon to be less dependent on getting all of our logistics for space travel from the Earth.
Hello, my name is Sean, and my question is, what kind of space station food experiments do you find to be the most delicious?
Every single one that involves fresh food has been delicious. My favorite was the Hatch chilies we grew up here recently, and some of them got returned to the Earth frozen as samples, but some they let us taste, and they were wonderful. They were quite spicy, though, too.
Hi, my name is Skylar. My question is, are there any wet lab experiments happening in space, and what are the challenges of operating a wet lab in space?
Yeah, in fact, while I'm in this module, I remember very well in the first half of this flight doing a lot of experiments. The name of the science experiment was celestial immunity. It was learning how being in space affects our immune systems. That's very important for us to understand. But one of the challenges is we had samples, fluid, in Petri dishes, and they were contained by just the lid of a Petri dish, which on the ground would keep fluid in pretty well, but in space, the viscosity will keep the fluid in the bottom of the Petri dish, but we had to be extremely careful to prevent that fluid from escaping. So as we had to move these samples into a chamber that simulated being as part of the human body with the appropriate temperature, it was really challenging trying to move those samples and maintain the science.
Hi, my name is Faisal, and my question to you guys is, how do you keep track of your sleep schedule without a normal sunrise or sunset?
We actually just had to pick a time. So we use Greenwich Mean Time as the time for the space station. That puts us about 6 hours ahead right now of where we are, where I live in Houston. And one of the things we do is when we finish the workday, we change the lighting. So we have kind of work lights on right now, but to simulate the end of the day and to get our bodies to adjust, kind of like seeing a sunset, we can put on a mode on these lights called pre-sleep. So it gives us kind of an more orange colored light. That helps us out a lot.
Hi, my name is Will. My question is, how do you get and recycle oxygen in the space station?
Well, we actually use electrolysis to break water into its component parts, one of which would be oxygen. Of course, we can also get oxygen from tanks provided by spacecraft deliveries, so we have that as well.
Hi, my name is Charles. My question is, if there's a problem with a computer on board, how does tech support work on the space station?
Fortunately for us, we can just say, Houston, we have a problem. Tell the ground team what the situation is, and they're very, very helpful. We have a wonderful team of experts on the ground, and they they will tell us, they will ask us if it's okay for us to stay hands off of a computer. Well, they take remote control of it and try to figure out what the problems are and solve them for us. There are some times when we have to replace the hardware. We've got spares of hardware up here, and we've got the procedures on how to make sure we do that correctly.
Hi, my name is Carrie, and my question is, how are the tools you use to build and repair things in space differ than the ones used on Earth?
I think you'd be impressed with how similar the tools we use in space are to the ones we use on the Earth. We've got quite a nice toolkit. Some of the techniques are different, though. For example, one time to remove a stripped bolt, I had to drill into the bolt and extract the bolt. But to get that drill up here in space to work, you have to be very careful about all those metal shavings that come off in the normal process of drilling. So one of the techniques we have to use on the ground is to lubricate the bolt head or screw head with shaving cream, because that will make it safer for us and capture all those metal shavings that could be something we accidentally inhale or get in our eyes. So techniques definitely have to be different in space.
Hi, my name is Tyler, and my question is, what person in history of space exploration do you find inspirational?
I find John Glenn to be very inspirational. I think I just really respect how humble he stayed throughout his entire career, and also how much he went out of his way to be a servant to the public.
Hi, my name is Sophie, and my question is, can you see the effects of global warming, like noticeable ice caps melting or strange weather patterns? Do you see any noticeable differences in your data?
So we certainly have data to support that. There are changes happening to the climate, ice caps receding, less smaller glaciers. For me personally, looking out the window, because I'm not familiar enough with areas and haven't been watching them for a long enough period of time, I haven't been able to directly observe that, but I can tell you that just on the ground, going on a hike in the Alps 25 years ago and then repeating that hike 25 years later, I was quite shocked at how different the location of the limits of the glaciers were on that hike.
Hi, my name is Jackson Butler, and my question is, do the astronauts design the experiments they perform, or are they given them to run for other scientists?
There's a very careful selection process for the science that astronauts do on the space station. We don't typically pick them ourselves. There are some people that kind of as a hobby on weekends will do their own little experiments, but the official experiments we do are determined by primary investigators on the ground. I perform activities much more like a laboratory technician. I just make sure that all the facilities are available for the experiments to run. When there's troubleshooting that needs to be done, we do that. We also help provide observations at times, but really when it comes down to it, the paper writing and the really great science we get out of the space station comes from scientists on the ground.
Hi, my name is Sophia, and I was wondering, do you guys have to pass a physical before going to space, and what kind of physical do they perform when you return to Earth?
Certainly part of the selection process involves a very detailed physical. You probably, if you've ever seen The Right Stuff, you get a little idea of some of the things we might do. It's kind of humorous. But yeah, it's a very thorough medical check, much more thorough than a typical person of my age would have gotten. And then you've got to stay in good shape, because you can get taken off of a flight if it turns out you've got a medical issue. And when I get back, there will be lots of tests, because I basically am a test subject. I'm like a guinea pig. We learn a lot about how my body reacts to being in space for so long. But one of the things that's kind of interesting, when I first get back on the ground, people are interested in what you can do, because we're going to send you people, maybe people your age or even younger, to Mars someday, where there will be no medical attention when they arrive. We need to have a very good understanding of what people have had an extended time period in space can do when they're isolated by themselves on another planet like Mars. So I will do some field tests when I return to see how my body reacts. How can I stand up? Can I move quickly? Things like that.
Hi, my name is Joshua. My question is, do you think it will be possible to grow vegetables on a scale that would support humans in the space station, moons, or even planets?
I would never write off the human race and say it's not possible. I certainly think it's possible. It's going to take a lot more work to make sure we can get to that scale, but that's certainly my hope. I really think that humanity figures out ways to do things.
Hi, my name's Kevin. My question is, if you could have any new feature added to the space station, what would it be?
Kevin, if I could have a feature added to the space station, without a doubt, it would be more windows. You can see behind me there's a couple windows. They look to the port side of the space station. Looking down towards the Earth is wonderful. This module I'm in doesn't have any windows towards the Earth. The next two adjacent modules don't have any. However, we've got some wonderful windows. You just don't always get to see it unless you take the time to go ahead and look at it.
Hi, my name is Jaden. My question is, what field of study best prepared you for a career with NASA?
That's a tough, so for me personally, I studied physics. All of my academic background was in physics and applied physics. And I feel like that prepared me very well. It certainly helped me understand some of the amazing science associated with how spacecraft work, and even having a better understanding of what we're experiencing as we float around on the space station constantly in a room that's falling towards the Earth but missing it because we're moving so quickly horizontally. It's just given me a good appreciation for things and helped me to quickly learn a wide variety of topics, which I think is really important for astronauts to be able to do.
Hi, I'm Nicholas, and I had a question about 3D printing and zero gravity. How does it affect the filament flow, and how does it stay on your printing surface?
So 3D printing works quite well up here. In fact, we've built parts for an antenna and some tools to help you get a sense of how liquids work in space. Although I can't say this is directly related to 3D printing, but it's kind of fun. I'm going to go ahead and try to make as large a water bubble as possible and try to control it, because you'll see that the viscosity of the water really is a dominant feature of how fluids react in space. So stand by. Now back to our regular program.
Hi, my name is Jason, and my question is, how does space debris affect the operations of the space station?
It's certainly something we have to pay attention to. Fortunately, we have national assets that provide us information about what things potentially could get close enough to us to be of concern. And if it gets close enough, we have the ability to do a orbital adjustment to try to get to a place that will have less of a probability of impact. But the space station is also designed for this environment. It has been struck multiple times. Fortunately, nothing has punctured a hole that went all the way through. So it's a great spaceship.
Hi, my name is Sadie, and my question is, what is your favorite terrain from space to look at?
Surprisingly, because I don't enjoy being in deserts as much as other places, but there's something about seeing deserts from space that's gorgeous. Of course, part of that might be because there's so little humidity that we can see it very clearly, but the changes in all the various tones and the textures, and I especially love to look at deserts when it is at night under a full moon, because you can see all of the terrain, and also any place there's human activity with lighting, you can see that as well.
Hi, my name is Jason. My question is, how does NASA plan to work with private industries to get back to the moon?
Well, we think what NASA is doing is determining the architecture and all of the interoperability standards so that we can get different companies to compete to provide the various parts that all have to interconnect to work. And honestly, one of the big things we're trying to do is make sure that in low Earth orbit, where I am right now, that we can have successful business models so that the government will become one of many customers for the types of things we're doing now. And even having the space station or other space stations in the future serve as training grounds for people to prepare to go on very long duration flights. We need that to be successful so that we can invest more into traveling further and further away.
Hello, my name's Maddie, and my question is, how does space affect your height, aging, and muscles in space?
So aging, there's no relativistic effects that will make me come back younger, at least not significantly, like nanoseconds. As far as height's concerned, the curvature in our spine is affected by being in space, so our spines tend to straighten out a little bit, and we get a little taller. Now, I've always wanted to be a little taller, but unfortunately for me, when I return to Earth, that effect is not long-lasting. And there's a big effect on bone density. So our health can be affected by bone density and our musculature. If we just float around all the time, our bodies adapt so well to that our bone density will go down and our strength will drop significantly because we just don't need it as much. So what we do is we exercise we've got 2.5 hours every day set aside for us to exercise, and that's really important. We've got resistive exercise and cardiovascular exercise. So that helps us stay very strong. For me, I've noticed coming back to Earth that the muscles I used to balance were the things that I had the hardest time keeping strong. So I expect to feel a little grumpy and sore when I bend over and try to balance on one leg to tie a shoe, because those muscles will not be happy.
Hello, my name is Leighton, and my question is, how does an astronaut prepare for a long mission in space?
I think every astronaut probably prepares for that a little bit differently. I think one of the most important things to do is make sure your family's well taken care of, and so that you can go away, even if you're in the military deploying, it helps you focus much more on your job if you know the things you care about the most are well taken care of. For me personally, having this be a very long duration flight, I really tried to pay attention to my mental health. And one of the things I made a habit of doing is trying to meditate every day. I don't always manage to do that, but I would say about 90% of the time I've been able to set aside some time to meditate, and it really helps me put things in perspective.
Hi, my name is Haley, and my question is, what is the biggest challenge you have faced during one of your expeditions?
Haley, not this flight, but my previous flight, I had to do some EVAs, and on one of those, I had to turn off the spacesuit. It's kind of like if you have a computer problem, and you have to shut off the computer and reboot it to start it up again. That's basically what I was doing. All the life support systems on my spacesuit have a computer that runs them, and the computer screen wasn't making sense. So the ground told me basically to reboot the computer. I didn't realize in the process how much of an impact that would have on me. It shut down the fans, it shut down the cooling system. My visor started fogging up. I couldn't see the switches to turn the computer back on. I did manage to get that back on, but the life support system, the fan switch, I really had a hard time turning on, because I think the lack of visibility and the fact that I hadn't at that point in my career memorized which way to flip that switch, I might have been trying to flip the switch in the wrong direction. Fortunately, I had another teammate with me that flipped the switch, and everything was just fine, and then we went ahead and did an almost 8-hour spacewalk after that.
Wow, that was incredible. I'm Dr. Mallory White, biology professor at Virginia Western, and I know I speak for all of us here in the Star City and at Virginia Western when I say thank you to NASA for the time and space to be curious today. Stay safe and be well.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event.
And thank you to all participants. Station, we're now resuming operational comm.